Friday, and it's time for another college football forecast. I am your forecaster, I guess your football weather professional, joined as always by it's my right, I guess, by the babyface as himself, Brock Vieira, who will be helping us land this amazing plane. And you will be joined soon by Zach MConnell, one of the best when it comes to FCS and HBCU football of the Bluebloods. I am so excited about this show. But let's take a quick look back and then we'll take a look forward. So what do we now know that we didn't know before the last time we spoke a week ago, Brock?
It's very clear that our dynamic in college football is shifting. And I'm not even talking about teams in general, which we can jump in a second. I'm talking about conferences. For a long time, SEC was clearly their number one, which we still believe, and the Big Ten was the number two. Now, the Big Ten will get that number two status when USC and UCLA join the conference. But right now, the clear conference in college football is Pac-12. There's a good chance that you could see legitimately 3 teams from that conference make the college football playoff. And if UCLA wins out, we could have 4 potential for a conference that was dead in the water in the offseason. So they have really come back. Obviously, we expected it with USC, we expected it with Utah. Since Oregon really battled off to Georgia on the road in Atlanta, absolutely steamrolled every single team since. Washington has have a great running back combo, even though they haven't played good as of late. Washington played very interesting. They did lose a tough one at home to Utah with Cam Ward as their quarterback. The Cougars are in a really great spot. And what is happening down in Arizona? I'm not saying they could be a college football playoff potential team, but there's a lot of things to make themselves be very competitive again. The jump they took from last year is clear as day. Jet Fish, I believe, has done a phenomenal job. I give credit he deserves. Coaches, guys like Ralph Leopold, so on and so forth. That guy deserves flowers as well. The Pac-12 right now, I would say, number 2 conference in all of America.
Well, one, I didn't think we'd be saying that when the season began. I think we both hoped the Pac-12 might sort of head back towards respectability and maybe even, being, like I said, a contender to get finally into for the first time since a long time ago, talked about in the Final Four for a championship. The thing that I think I've come to realize is that the usual suspects, right? Not just in terms of football programs, but even in terms of like the top prospects, may not be as strong as some people thought. But I think that the next tier below is closer than people believe. I just finished a whole article about the not top 10 cornerbacks. I think that this could be a class where cornerbacks who are going to be undrafted free agents, 5th and 6th round draft picks, and 3rd and 4th round draft picks are going to have long, successful careers, while some of the guys picked early may end up struggling. I think that there's a lot of talent in places where people aren't looking, including FCS and HBCU. That is my smooth segue very soon to our very special guest, who is the best of the best. We're going to talk about a few more news and notes, and then I will bring on our very special guest, Zach MConnell, who is the man at the Bluebloods. So tell me about the game that you're most excited about coming up.
Wow. So there's a lot of great matches, but I think something that you and I both highlighted off air is Oklahoma State versus Kansas State. Now, obviously, this is a big test for Mike Gundy and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They did have that one loss a couple weeks ago, but they rebounded. Really, I want to use dominant. I'm looking for. It really, they rose up when it came to playing Texas, right? Yeah. Now, Texas is a team that I have zero faith in. I've expressed that for a very long time. I've called for Sark's head since probably the Red River of last season. We know he cannot win. It doesn't matter who his quarterback is. It doesn't matter a great show against Oklahoma, who's ranked 116th in the nation in defense. Nobody talks about that when they talk about Sark blowing out Oklahoma. Whenever they face competition that's about their level or above, they lose. There is no doubt about it. But Mike Gundy is the opposite. Whenever we expect him to lose, he wins. Whenever we expect him to win, he loses. And this is that situation back to back. Of course, we expected the bookies. I called for Oklahoma State, and I want to make that very clear.
That's
but
correct.
At Texas, a 6-point favorite. Oklahoma State wins. Now, Oklahoma State, I believe, is the favorite against Kansas State. But Adrian Martinez questionable to go, and only having one loss in the season. This was like a trap. This feels like a game where Kansas is going to control the clock. They're going to run the ball hard, fun, and Oklahoma State, who's ranked 107 in the nation right now in total defense, which is absolutely abysmal. Jim Knowles is able to do just a season ago. Derek Mason has to feel the pressure right now. I think this defense is going to falter. It's going to dominate on the ground and going to win this football. But this game, I'm very intrigued because, again, when it comes to top 10, this is a game, if Oklahoma State loses, they're out for good. And that can reshape the current landscape of the college football playoffs.
Yeah. It's one of those things you can mark in your little, preseason preview things. At some point, Kansas State is going to knock somebody off in a quote unquote stunning upset. If you do it for 30 years, is it still a stunning upset? But yes, I agree. Every year that the good Lord sends us, Kansas State knocks somebody off, and we should see it coming. I remember when Bill Snyder first went there, people thought he was crazy. Why would you go to Kansas State? I mean, nobody wins there. The best had gone there and lost. I think the last time they'd had a winning season before he went there, it's a coach we don't associate with Kansas State because only there a few years he used it as a springboard. But they had a good run under him. I can't remember his name now. It'll come back to me. But he went to the SEC, right? He got the heck out. And
Wasn't Vince Dooley?
I think you're right. I think it might have been Vince Dooley. I'd have to go back and check to be sure. But I know it was a guy who was like 3 seasons, and then as soon as the get was good, he'd realized, I got to get out before the posse catches up with me. But what Bill Snyder built at Kansas State, books should be written. Movies should be made because it was considered literally one of the worst jobs in college football. It's not really near anything. It's a place where it's considered very difficult to recruit. When it gets cold there, it gets very cold. The nightlife, they make jokes about the nightlife, the Little Apple in Manhattan, but it's what you think it is. It's like, let's go out and have some beer and maybe some breakfast food. And that's pretty much it. But yes, he's managed to build a monster there. But enough about that. And our X's and O's segment will follow our extremely special guest. But with no further waiting, no further ado, ladies, gentlemen, all the ships at sea, I would like to present to you Zach MConnell of the Bluebloods. There he is.
Woo! What's up, guys? How are y'all doing?
We're great now. We have someone here who has their fingers pressed against the pulse of FCS. And, of course, near and dear to my heart because I am a former HBCU graduate. Well, not former graduate. I'm still a graduate. But a former student athlete. More student than athlete, as anyone who someone could tell you. At Norfolk State. But I have a few quick questions. I'm going to open up to my friend Brock. I've been hearing a lot about HBCU super conference ideas, the old super conference idea. And then some people think HBCU only conferences are soon going to be a thing of the past. So we'll talk about specific games in a moment. But from what you're hearing and what you're seeing, do you think either of those things are likely? Either there's going to someday be a HBCU super conference with all or most of the HBCUs in it, and then sort of just divided up regionally where they play against the East versus West or North versus South? Or do you think it's likely they go away and they just all join other conferences or other teams that aren't HBCUs join their conferences and sort of dilute it?
If I had to make a guess, I would say it would be more likely that a super conference would be formed rather than you would see HBCU conferences gone away, especially with how strong the SWAC is. Even if the MEAC decides to go their own direction, which is completely possible, you never know. The SWAC is strong. Especially with Prom being there, you see Willie Simmons still doing his thing. You've still got McNair over at Alcorn State, and Hugh Jackson just got to Grambling. We'll see kind of how they move in the right direction moving forward, possibly. Dooley at Southern is doing his thing as well. He's been successful in the conference, was just in the SWAC championship a year ago over at PV. We'll see what UAPB does with that hire. I have mild hopes that they make the right hire there, but the SWAC is going to keep HBCU conferences strong. The question is the MEAC, and I think that's where a lot of the question marks come, because they've lost baseball completely. All the teams that have baseball are playing in the Northeast Conference, the NEC, and right now it looks like the MEAC basketball is really like the saving force for them, and that's not really my specialty, so I can't speak on who's good and anything like that. But the question becomes with the Big South, they're losing Campbell and A&T to the CAA. The ASUN is losing Jacksonville State and Kennesaw State to the CUSA in a handful of years.
Yep.
Do the MEAC, ASUN, Big South come up with some sort of merger, some sort of scheduling alliance to help each other? We've seen the OVC and Big South do that. We've seen the Southland and some conferences and some conferences do that. So that's the question mark. But I do think a super conference is more likely than no HBCU conferences. But if the MEAC does decide to add some PWIs, look for some of those Big South teams to be involved in some form or fashion. But listen, with how strong the SWAC is, I'm never going to say that that conference is going to fold anytime soon.
Understood. I'm going to open up to my co-host Brock, the baby-faced assassin. What questions might you have for Zach?
Well, first, before I start asking questions, Zach, I want to say, coming on the show, I don't think you understand how excited Bill was when we confirmed that you were coming on. That has not stopped talking about you, so thank you for being here. Also, you are a kind soul for associating Hugh Jackson moving forward. I'll never do. All those jokes. I want to get to the main kind of meat of my question, and that is obviously HBC, Jackson State, are at the forefront of college football at this moment. What will HBCUs look like come 10, 15 years now? Will they be yes? Will they be dominating playoffs? Where do you see them going?
Well, the playoff conversation is one that's going to take a lot of time to kind of dissect. With the Celebration Bowl being around, the SWAC champion, MEAC champion are already locked in contractually up until I think 2026 or so to go to that. But I think Jackson State moving forward is probably the most interesting option. Right now, they're 5th in the coaches poll, 9th in the media poll. And there's a lot of questions around the FCS community about how that team would fare against some of the top ranked teams. The closest thing we saw was last week with Campbell, who, wasn't in the top 25, but has a promising program under head coach Mike Minter. That was a good game. Jackson State came on top. The defense was dominant. I think Jackson State can compete with some of those top teams. It's just, are they going to be able to schedule it? Jackson State's schedule is pretty much locked up to 2025. But the question becomes, and this is something that I've talked to a lot of people, covering SWAC football, is that how are the other teams going to catch up? We know the effect that prom has in terms of recruiting and bringing in money and when you have Zimmer as an analyst, that's something that a lot of programs and just nationally, even at the FBS level, can't match. It's just, how does Willie Simmons, how does Hugh Jackson, how does Connell Maynor, how does Eddie Robinson Jr., all these coaches keep up in some form or fashion? But I think the future of SWAC football, HBCU football is really bright, especially when you look at this year. They've had some big wins out of conference. I believe the SWAC has a winning out of conference record at the FCS level. The MEAC is just under 500. They've had some tough matchups, but I think overall, man, the future is extremely bright moving forward. The biggest question is it going to be Jackson State and everybody else, or is Jackson State's success going to bring up some of these other teams along with them?
Absolutely. You brought up a great point about Jackson forefront and how to follow. Now, some of these programs have those big names. We already talked about Hugh Jackson, the Grambling State. Tennessee State went and got Eddie George. However, Tennessee State's ranked 4. Grambling is 1. Will these new who have gotten jobs based off who they are instead of building themselves along the normal coaching rank? Will that be detrimental to these programs heading forward, or will those be beneficial programs, these big name coaches?
Man, that's a tough question. I think it depends on the fit. I don't think what Prom Dion is doing at Jackson State would work everywhere, if that makes sense. I think it depends on the program. We'll see what Grambling looks like moving forward with Hugh Jackson. It's still year one, still very early to judge how that's working. Tennessee State's in the OVC race. If they win these next 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to get an automatic bid to the playoffs. And at their one D2 loss to Lane, it came when they're missing their starting quarterback. I think it was 10 or 11 starters were out that game. Still kind of an inexcusable loss, but that program has really been taking a turn for the better recently. Now, on the flip side, you look at someone like a Morgan State. I think Damon Wilson was a better hire than any celebrity that they could have brought in there.
Mm-hmm.
Damon Wilson has ties to the DMV area. He's shown that he can win at a high level at Bowie State at the D2 level. If he can bring that winning culture, he brought his defensive coordinator, Anton Sewell, who is one of my favorite defensive coordinators in the FCS. Morgan State's future looks extremely bright. So I just think it depends on the program. Morgan State knows what they needed. And it was a coach like Damon Wilson. When you look at the brand recognition, everything that Jackson State already had, they just needed someone to light the flame, which was a Deion Sanders. So I would say you can't go wrong either way. You just have to find the right coach for your program that fits what you're trying to build at your respected institution.
Yeah, and I want to just throw out there, Andrew Barber went also freaking nuts in that game.
Yes,
I think that was I had a little mini conversation, and I won't name the particular All-Star game, but somebody who runs an All-Star game and I had a conversation about him. I'll just leave it at that. And Mr. Barber raised his profile in that game. I can assure you that word is out now about Andrew Barber II. If it wasn't before that game, it is definitely out now. I mean, that guy was like, who took their Michael Strahan juice? He was unblockable in that game. So that's, once again, you said it's not, you can't really excuse the loss, but when somebody's playing like that, who is a legitimate NFL prospect, there's a few teams that would have struggled with Andrew Barber. Yes. Not just FCS who would have had trouble with him. Speaking of Andrew Barber, and not him specifically, but let's talk about the sort of future of the talent level, the talent base. Obviously, Travis Hunter is what got people who never paid attention to HBCU football before suddenly paid attention. Who are some other players that maybe people who don't pay attention to HBCU football should know about that you think could find their way onto some of the bigger All-Star games and possibly even the NFL?
Yeah, man, the list is so long this year, man. The prospect list is huge. Aubrey Miller, first one that comes to mind at middle linebacker. I mean, when you're looking for a prototypical Mike linebacker, like the dictionary should have a picture of Aubrey Miller. What he did this weekend against Campbell for Jackson State was so impressive. He's had it's going to be 2 straight years of first team all SWAC selection at the linebacker spot. Also, man, when you're just looking around the country, you got to also go to Kamari Everett for Bethune-Cookman at the tight end spot. I said I gave him high praise coming into the season. He had a bit of a slow start, but I still think QB inconsistency is slowing down what he really could be. I still think talent-wise, he's probably one of the better tight ends in the entire country, not just at the FCS level. And when you also look around, you got to look at South Carolina State. When you look at the standard of HBCU sending people to the NFL in recent history, Buddy Pugh and South Carolina State do it at a high level. Jablonski Green, BJ Davis are 2 names that come off the page immediately on defense. But let's not forget that bad man number 1, Shaq Davis. He's on a different level. I mean, watching the game this weekend against North Carolina Central, they knew it was coming. They're doubling him. They got their fingers crossed that they're bracketing him, and they cannot stop him. And it's been like that for 2 years now. And I really do think he can earn his way into being a day 2 pick. And I really like his game. He's just on a whole another level. And then Sundiata Anderson down at Grambling too at the defensive end spot. I still think he's one of the better run defenders at the defensive end spot. His pass rushing still needs a little bit of work, but I think he's a high level player. And then a sleeper for y'all before I let y'all take it over. Isaiah Hamilton for Texas Southern. That I do not think people understand how talented he is, and they're letting the school overshadow his real talent. He has the length, he has the speed, he has the ability to shut down the side of a field. Right now, I checked about 2 weeks ago, he was top 15 in the entire country in coverage grade according to Pro Football Focus, leads the SWAC by a significant amount, and he led at the SWAC last year as well. So Isaiah Hamilton from Texas Southern is a guy that I think by the end of the year is going to be on a lot of people's radars moving forward.
I agree with all of those, and I may throw 1 or 2 more at you and see what you think of them. But before I do that, I'm going to let Brock take another poke or two. What other questions do you have for Zach, Brock?
So, obviously, as we talked about recently, Jackson State forefront HBCUs, and we just talked about all this potential NFL talent that is associated with not only HBCUs but FCS and so forth. Obviously, Jackson State is going to play. This is Georgia Southern. Who do they play this? Bill? I forget. At 5-2.
Southern.
Yeah. Southern.
Thank you. So they play Sunday. They're 5-2. If Shedeur Sanders balls out, could you potentially see yourself in the Heisman conversation? Before you answer that, I just want to put these numbers for people doing through 7 games so far. Sanders has 2,218 yards, 23 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Hendon Hooker, for example, has 2,093 yards, 18 touchdowns, 1 interception in 7 games. In 8 games, Bryce Young only has 1,006 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 3 INTs. And then CJ Stroud through 7 games has 2,023 yards, 28 TDs, and 4 INTs. So obviously Sanders has passing yards on this list. He also has the second highest touchdown list as well. Could that possibly happen? And do you think that the voters are not going to give him his flowers because of where he plays?
It's not even a conversation. It's cool. I get it. You got a rep for your player. He's not even going to win the Walter Payton at the FCS level, which is the FCS Heisman. And he might not even finish top 3. So, I mean, just to throw some people back at you, man, when you look at the level that's being set at the FCS level, Lindsey Scott Jr. transferred in from Nicholls State from Incarnate Word.
Yes.
I mean, he's also played 7 games. He's thrown for 2,800 yards, 37 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing, and has only thrown 2 picks the entire year, one of which came in an FBS win, 14 points over Nevada on the road. And then you got Tim DeMoret. 3,000 yards, 3,000 yards in only 6 games, 33 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing, 4 interceptions, both of which have a higher completion percentage and just passer efficiency than Shedeur. And both of them, too, by the way, have thrown less attempts than Shedeur throughout the season. So it's cool. Listen, he has the hype, and the Heisman is kind of a quote-unquote hype award. If it's all about hype, then yeah, throw him in the conversation. But if we're talking real numbers and real performance, Lindsey Scott Jr. and Tim DeMoret are the 2 FCS guys that really should be in the conversation over Shedeur Sanders.
Absolutely. So I want to push it right back at you because those names. In your opinion, who is the favorite for the Walter Payton Award?
Right this second, Lindsey Scott. But if Tim DeMoret goes into Holy Cross this weekend and puts it on Holy Cross, which is a top 5 team in the country and has dominated the Patriot League, that race gets a lot closer. But when you look at what Lindsey Scott's done, he's played a top 30 strength of schedule. He's beat a top 10 team week 1 with a first-year head coach in BJ Kinney. He beat Southern Illinois on the road week 1, beat Nevada by double digits. His sole loss, he played a heck of a game, and they lost on a Hail Mary attempt where the corner was talking to the DB coach on the sideline for some reason, and they snapped it, and he just got burned off the line. When you look at the pace that Lindsey Scott's setting, I think right now he's running away with it, unless DeMoret does something this weekend against Holy Cross that is just unbelievable.
Got you. One final question. I know Bill wants to talk to you.
No. Get him off, Brock.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, when we talk about the 2023 NFL draft coming up, a big thing is the Bryce Young Hooker. I believe the last time that each quarterback was taken the first round was Steve McNair when he went 3rd overall to the I think the only other selection was Doug Williams or Grambling. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but could we potentially this year, maybe 2-3 years down the line, quarterback be taken?
So this year's there's 0 shot. I mean, I don't think there's a draft eligible quarterback from the HBCU ranks that is even going to be drafted. I think your best shot Shedeur in 2 years? If he's probably going to stay for 4. I mean, he's going to stay for 4 most likely. Just FCS players usually don't leave in 3 years. But even if he does, Shedeur is going to be the only one in that conversation unless someone goes out and lands a 5-4-star quarterback unexpectedly. I think D. Davis is the next highest rated quarterback, but he's really been struggling with injuries at Alabama State. His size is a bit of a question, and he's also just a redshirt freshman. So it's hard to project if Shedeur is going to be a first-round pick from the FCS. Man, the guy is a sophomore and it hasn't even completed his sophomore year. It's so hard in college football with all the unknowns to project a guy to be a first-round pick in 2 years. Shedeur is going to have a great shot at it, but Well, I'm going to have to see how he performs these next few years before I just, pin him in for a first round pick. But he has the talent, his pocket presence, his accuracy is all there. We know he trains with Tom Brady. I mean, he has everything you want going forward. His size is NFL caliber. But I just until I see it his senior year and see what he develops into, I can't say he's going to be a guaranteed first round pick. But that right now that's the only HBCU quarterback I see having a shot at the first round in the NFL draft.
Got you. And then just for the quarterbacks are different when you compare quarterbacks to the rest of them. But obviously, Travis was one of the top recruits in the country, if not the but the Jackson State freshman, so not going to be drafted for a long time. But will we see more HBCU players in the first round as the talent pool gets better for these schools?
Yes, it should. And I tell people all this all the time. I don't like to change the argument, but it's a problem not just for HBCUs. It's also a problem for FCS programs too. And I think Bill can even speak to this too with me. Is that if you don't play Power 5 football, really and truly Power 5, let's even throw Group of 5 into this, it's really hard to go high in the draft. They're going to pick apart your schedule. They're going to pick apart coaching and tech. I mean, they're going to absolutely try to find any reason not to draft you in the first round, and especially at the FCS level, it's going to be really tough. When I'm looking across FCS this year, I think talent wise, Kamari Everett can be a first round. It has first round talent. Is he going to go first round? Probably not, because he's not going to have the production due to his quarterback play. Mark Evans from UAPB at the offensive line. That dude, I'm sorry, he's a top 5 offensive lineman in this draft class. But because he played at UAPB, he's going to really have to show out to get that look. But offensive linemen have been, and I don't know how Bill feels about this. I feel like the NFL's been a bit more lenient trying to take FCS linemen early. We saw Alabama State had a kid go first round a few years back. We had 2 go this year, and Trevor Penning and then Cole Strange from Chattanooga to the Patriots. So I think Mark Evans and some of these linemen that are coming up, Drake Centers, even potentially at Texas Southern, those are some names you need to look for, because really and truly for skill guys, when you look at how good Christian Watson was, the fact that he didn't break into the first round shows you how hard it is as a skill player from the FCS level to go in the first round.
Yeah, I still haven't fully recovered from the fact that Teron Armstead didn't go in the first, but
insane.
oh my gosh. I mean, he was literally a made-to-order left tackle. And no offense to Lane Johnson. And Lane Johnson was a terrific prospect too, but I gave the slight edge to Armstead over Johnson even in my particular ratings. It is extremely difficult. What Zach said is sadly incredibly true. I remember when
Oklahoma right tackle, like, it's going to be hard for a lot of people in those.
A friend of mine, shout out to Brian Jovic, but a friend of mine was the assistant strength and conditioning coach at Tennessee State when Dominic Rogers-Cromartie went 7th overall. And, they'd seen lots of guys around, and, a lot of people were sort of like kind of playing it down. Oh yeah, we like him. Yeah, he's got good length. And then he goes out and runs, and that's the one thing that breaks through all that other stuff you mentioned. Go out and run 4.2 something, right? That's the one thing. Yep. Go out and run 4.2 something, and that's the one thing. Jerome Mathis was a pretty good football player, but he wasn't going to go anywhere close to as high as he did. He ran 4.25. All of a sudden, people who I don't think had ever heard of Jerome Mathis were all of a sudden excited about Jerome Mathis. I've been watching Jerome Mathis for a while, and I knew his strengths and weaknesses, so I wasn't quite as high. It's funny. I knew him, and I wasn't as high as some people. The people who knew nothing about him were like, "Oh my God, he might go in the top 50 picks." You know what I'm talking about. I know you know, Zach. I would like to dig a little bit more into a little bit of D2 as well. I'm a big fan of Jada Byers. Obviously, yes, right.
I watched his film, so because D2 kind of falls behind my FCS and FBS coverage. Man, right. Someone sent me his film and was like, listen, because the question was, how far can Virginia Union go in the playoffs? And I deferred to Dr. Cavill, my guy, Stephen Gaither over at HBCU Game Day. I mean, they think that it's a semifinal team. And they said, if you can get to the semifinals, you can always win a natty. That's just how it is. When you get to that Final Four, you can win. And it's just a coin toss at that point. But, man, I went and watched this kid's film last night when I was in my hotel. I had nothing to do. They said, go check him out. Man, he's next level. I mean, I have not. I don't know. I'm not up on my D2 history as much as I am FCS and FBS. I don't remember a guy that explosive from the D2 level of running back. It's insane.
The last one I think I could really throw at you. Well, I mean, Eckler was at the RMAC conference, right? He's Western, and then Danny Woodhead at Chadron State are guys that kind of leap to mind. Danny Woodhead was an unstoppable killing machine in college. The numbers he put up were incredible. I think he led all levels of football in all-purpose yardage one year. All levels. NAIA, D3, throw whatever you want in there. I think one year he led everybody in all-purpose yardage. Because smartly, they gave him the ball everywhere they could. They let him run the ball like 22 times a game. Then they'd throw about 8 or 9 times a game. And he returned all the punts and all the kickoffs because he's Danny Woodhead. And Eckler was somewhat similarly used in his days at Western in Western State in Colorado. But yes, if Jada Byers was a little bit bigger, and that's what you're going to hear, but he was a little bit bigger because you're going to hear that all the time. If he was just an inch and a half taller, if he was just 15 pounds heavier,
if he puts on some weight though, I don't know how you feel about this comp. He could be a Darren Sproles easily at the next level.
I promise you, he's heard that one before.
Oh yeah. Well, you see, listen, I went to K-State for a few years, so like I'm up on the Darren, the Darren Sproles. But I mean, when you look at his, 1,500 yards.
Yep.
And they've only played 8 games.
Yep.
That makes zero sense. And especially with his size, like you mentioned, he's what 5'7"
ish,
maybe. Ish. That's what the website I think has him listed. But like I've seen him in person, so I don't know. They always like to say 2 inches at most on the website. So I'm hoping he's not 5'5", but we'll take 5'7" at its face value right now.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he's 5'7", but yeah, I mean, I root for him to win the weigh-in because, as you said, they'll take your game apart. They'll look at the fact that you're playing against, future pharmaceutical sales reps and all that stuff they like to say. But that kid, listen to me now and hear me later. My friend, Mr. Eric Galco at the East-West Shrine game. Bring him in. Call that kid up because I want to see him get a chance to show what he can do against that level because he's got it, man. He's got it. Vision, explosion, strength for his size. I mean, he's got a big old engine in that little tiny body. I keep envisioning him as the scat back to a guy like Najee Harris, you know what I mean? Because the Steelers definitely need speed. That team has got a lot of big, slow dudes on both sides of the ball, except like TJ Watt, obviously. A few other guys, but they've got, and of course, Mapletron can run, but the rest of that team, not to be burners on that team. And teams like that, speed challenge teams, would be smart to bring that guy in. He's a terrific space player. And I mentioned, obviously, his name earlier, Andrew Barber II. I am such a big fan of his. I was a big fan of his last year, and I thought he might, I'll be honest, I thought he might grad transfer. I was a little bit pleasantly surprised when he stayed at Lane. Have you had a chance to check him out yet, Zach?
Yes. So like he's one of the people that were kind of put on my radar. If I'm not mistaken, has he accepted an invite to the HBC Legacy Bowl?
I believe he has, but I think he may have to go back on it because he might have a better offer to go someplace else. But yeah, so far he has.
Because I went and checked him out. 25 tackles for loss in 8 games.
Yep.
That's got to be a record, right? Because I watched this film because they played UAPB to open the season, and I think in that game he had like 6 or 7 tackles for loss, and they could not block him.
At like 3.5 sacks. Yes, correct.
Yeah, and they have the best offensive lineman in the SWAC in Mark Evans, and they had no answer for him. No answer for him, and his size isn't a problem either. Really, he's 6'4", maybe his weight a little bit, but outside of that, there's nothing on film that suggests he can't play at the next level. I agree with you. Him and Jada, in my opinion, are the 2 best D2 prospects in the country.
Zach, I love you because you're so smart. Because you agree with me so much. But I think, and I love Jada, but I think it's probably Barber a little bit, partially because he does fit more what NFL teams have in mind. Remember Dominique Robinson from Miami of Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's everything that Dominique Robinson was, but I think stronger at the point of attack. I think he's got more natural, heavier hands and more pop in his upper body than Robinson did. The Robinson might have been a little bendier, but I've seen this guy take on blockers at the, when guys are trying to run his way, which I guess they're thinking, well, we'll neutralize some of the pass rush by running towards him. Nope. No, that
he's
doesn't work
great
either.
in run defense. Great in run defense.
Fantastic in run defense. If there's a weakness in his game, maybe he's not the most flexible kid in the world. But hey, yoga exists for a reason. And yes, 12 more pounds, right? I guess he could probably use 12 more pounds of muscle, but those are, once again, we got weight rooms. Last time I checked, everybody has a weight room. So I don't think there's anything there to me that would keep this guy from being at least a rotational pass rusher. I think he'd be way more than that, quite frankly. But I'm trying to keep it contained. Try not to go too far out there, get a little too goofy with it. But is there another? Sorry, go ahead, Brock.
Still is with this guy. Like, I just want to add that, like, this man has not been talking about Barber for probably the past 2 months. Every time phone call, this guy's name gets mentioned. Like, this Bill is in love with this prospect. That's all I gotta say.
I'll be honest, he's my guy. He is my guy. I have bothered some people at All-Star games about him. I apologize ahead of time, but I won't stop. I'm not going to stop. I'll try to be respectful with my bothering you, but I will definitely retweet his highlights. I will definitely bring up his statistics to certain people. I just think he deserves a shot. I really do believe that if he gets the right opportunity in the postseason, if he tests well, which is everything when you're a D2 prospect, it's everything. If you run a little slower than expected and you're at LSU, Georgia, whatever, maybe you're having an off day. Nope, you can't have an off day if you're a D2 prospect. You need to have the day of your life when they come to test you. There's no, people love to say, we're just going to watch the tape. Not when you're a D2 prospect. You got the world's best tape on the planet. You better show up and run fast if you want to get any chance of being drafted. Do you have any other guys that you really like that you want to big up? But they don't have to be HBCU guys, just guys that you really like, Zach.
At the D2 level or just any?
Either any level that you've really fallen in love with or like.
Man, as an O lineman, Cody Mock over at North Dakota State, that dude is just I don't know how they develop offensive linemen up there consistently. I mean, it's unfair, and they turn like tight ends into some of the best offensive linemen that you've ever seen, and I just don't understand. Like when Cody Mock came in, I got it pulled up right here. He was 6'4", 234 as a freshman out of North Dakota. He is 6'7", 300 plus pounds right now, and is the number one probably FCS prospect in the draft class. And his technique is flawless. And I really do think he's going to follow Trevor Penning and Cole Strange and potentially be a first-round pick. Also, I love Justin Ford over at Montana. I'm not 100% pleased at how Montana's using him. I think they keep putting him in zone, and man, that dude, just put him on the best wide receiver and say, listen, he's a
press man corner. Yes,
exactly. He doesn't get the ball. And when you tell him that, I've had him on the show, he said, I can do it. He was like, they just sometimes don't let me. And it's the most frustrating thing ever because they keep putting him in really bad situations. And you saw what happened when they played him in man last year, 9 interceptions and 23 pass breakups in the season. And he scored 3 defensive touchdowns. He's a different level of corner. He was a transfer from, I believe, Louisville. Yes. And he could be starting at a Power 5 institution today if he wanted to. But those are probably my 2 biggest FCS prospects that I've just fallen in love with. And I will ride for them until the wheels fall off because I think they are that good right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. Another guy I really, really love, since you're talking about like Big Sky and Missouri Valley, I love a kid named Maxwell Anderson at Weber State. He's smooth.
Oh my goodness! What 5 picks this year?
And
5 picks. God, he's so good.
Smooth with it, Zach.
Oh, I agree. No, I had him in my top 3 for the Buck Buchanan this year, and then someone was like, "Can a DB really win it?" I was like, "If a DB should win it, it should have been Justin Ford last year and Maxwell Anderson this year because they are putting on." And then with Weber State, he's doing it with also Eddie Heckard stealing some of his opportunities.
Yes. What I admire about him is he's a full service corner. Like, yes, he's got ball protection, but I've seen him come up and run through blockers on those wide receiver screens. Like, nope, that's not working here today. Run through the blocker, make the tackle. I've seen him come up and run support. He's not afraid to stick his face in the fan, as they say. No fear of that. He contributes on special teams. I mean, he gives you everything. I don't understand why more people aren't talking about him, quite frankly.
I agree.
Once again, I'm trying to get him to a certain bowl game. Um, but I think that wherever he ends up, he's going to show people something. I would love him in Pittsburgh. But he's everything I like in a corner. And some people are going to say, well, is he big enough? He's probably a shade under 5'11". He's probably 180.
Long. He's long though. He's got the frame.
Yes, he can put on 10 pounds in a weekend. But I mean, I don't worry about some of that stuff. If you can jump, this is just me talking. I bet he's going to be 37, 38 inches when they put the vert on him.
Yes.
I've seen him go up and spear some balls.
Yes. His athleticism, like his hip flexibility too, is just on a different level. I agree with you. I think that kid is Sunday quality talent, and he's exploded onto the scene this year.
Yeah. Once again, you're so smart. All this agreeing with me just makes me love you even more. Give me one last sleeper. Maybe someone you think people aren't talking about enough, and then I'll let Brock ask the final question. Then I'll give you your life back.
Ooh, man, there's some really good choices. I'll go with offense, man. We've been giving defense a lot of praise on this show. I'll go with Geno Hess.
Oh,
I don't, he's a little shorter. I mean, 5'8", 5'7" but he's 220 plus. So he's got the weight on him. And this is a guy who just took over the career leading rusher record at Southeast Missouri State. He's rushed for over 3,200 yards and 14 touchdowns in his career. For his entire career, he only has one season, which was the COVID season, that he averaged less than 5.5 yards per carry. And this year, through 8 games, he's averaging over 7 yards per carry, 9 rushing touchdowns for Southeast Missouri State, while they're also throwing the ball for 300 plus yards a game. So he's getting his carries even when they're trying to throw the football. So Geno Hess would be my sleeper pick because we know FCS running backs can translate very well. Geno Hess is a guy that I think has NFL quality talent and should get a shot at the next level.
Yep. I called him mini Michael Tolbert. He's like a little dump truck. He has no fun to tackle in the open field. No. I've seen some guys, I won't say they made a business decision. I'll just say that they figured the best way to attack him was ankle height. I'll put it that way. They figured maybe he'll trip over me. Did you have a final question for our amazing guest?
Yes. So I want to talk about coach culture. Now, in this new of non-FBS D1 football, we see a lot of coaches ascend to those ranks and take over programs. We talked about Jackson, Eddie George, Deion Sanders. We also had guys by Petrino, Rich Rodriguez, so on and so forth. Some of these coaches don't have the best, per se, reputation around. Do you think, and Art Briles almost being hired at Grambling, the biggest example I always do you think that will be detrimental to the kids because coaches aren't the best people, or do you think just having the prestige of these coaches is beneficial to the programs?
Oh, man, talk about a question on that one. I think it depends on the person. I think the Art Briles situation, it was extremely different because what Bobby Petrino got in trouble for is a whole lot different than what Art Briles was fired for. And I don't think you could put those on the same plane at all. And even, I mean, I think it's good in a sense because, they're going to come in, coach some kids up and they're going to get some opportunities that they probably wouldn't have. But I think when you look at the most successful coaches at the FCS level, it's not those type of guys. It's the Matt Ince. You can go back to Chris Kleiman. You can, I mean, name who you want. When you look at the national championship winning coaches at James Madison, Sam Houston State, North Dakota State, the coaches over at Montana State, Weber State, all those coaches are not the celebrity names that were just drop downs from the FBS level that, did something bad to coming in. There's going to be programs that take a chance, but, when you look at the Bobby Petrinos of the world right now, I mean, they had a lot of expectations preseason, but I think there's a lot of things that called up to them this season. I'm sure Bill can speak to it too. They are not very good, to say the least. Now, Rich Rodriguez, he's doing his thing at Jacksonville State. And I will say this, the reason they brought in Rich Rodriguez is because they knew they were going to the FBS level. They're jumping to CUSA next year. They needed someone with experience at the FBS level because when your program moves up, unless you're like a KC Keeler over at Sam Houston State that has a long track record of success wherever you are, they wanted someone who knew what to do. That way they didn't fall flat on their face when they got to that next level. But I think it's a give and take to a sense, but it just is. It'd be a case by case basis. And Art Brawl's situation is not even comparable to Rich Rodriguez or Petrino being hired anywhere. So I think you just got to take it as like, oh, let's judge this individual as that individual rather than like a trend.
Got you. So I got 2 more questions for you before we, send you back to normal life. But obviously, in recent times, we've seen a lot of coaches make that jump to FBS level and have a fair amount of success. Time, Craig Bull at Wyoming. Talk about Lance Leopold. All these great coaches. Who, to me, is going to be Jay Keenan. But who do you think is going to be the next FCS coach to make that jump to FBS and have that?
The clock's ticking on Matt Entz, I feel like. If North Dakota State, I mean, this is probably the worst North Dakota State team in probably 8 years. But I mean, if they find a way to win the Natty, you got to. I mean, he's going to get opportunities somewhere, I would assume. I think when you're looking around the course, everyone brings up prom for literally every opportunity every week. I mean, it's gotten out of hand at this point. I mean, let's just take a breath. We'll see if he takes a job. If not, can we just stop linking him to every job that doesn't make sense? It just doesn't even make sense. Somebody who's going to be interesting, though, and this is going to be out of left field. He doesn't even have a winning record at his school right now. But if Mentor keeps recruiting at the pace that he is, Campbell finds a way to win the Big South this year, and then is competitive in the CAA, do not be surprised if Mike Mentor finds his way to the Group of 5 level. And I'll just leave it at that. And then also another one, it's kind of iffy because Delaware does potentially have a path to the next level, but don't be surprised if Ryan Carty is on a short list somewhere in the upcoming years if Delaware keeps on the trajectory that they're going.
Got you. As a UNLV alumnus, this name irritates me to my soul, but will Bobby Hawk ever make the jump back up to FBS?
I mean, if he keeps having as much success as he is right now, I don't see why he would, unless he takes the entire program to D1. But I don't see him leaving unless it's for a significant opportunity, and I don't see him getting one of those just yet.
Well, that does my soul. Last question. Who's the face of HBCU football? Deion Sanders and Eddie Robinson Jr.?
Oh, Jesus. No comment on that one.
Yeah, very smart, Zach. Do not fall for it. He's just he's going to make T-shirts off of that. You were very smart to dodge that one.
Yeah, no kidding. Hashtag who is swag.
Oh, Zach, this is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. Now, since we met and talked, and until cut day, he's next. But this has been a tremendous experience. I hope that this is not the last time. We have things we'll discuss and work on. Tell us and tell the world what you guys are up to, what you're putting together, what you're doing right now, and where they can find and follow your work.
Yeah, man, you can find us all podcast streaming platforms. We got our website, thebluebloodspod.com, where we post, our All-American top 25s, game recaps, game previews, all that good stuff on our website. You can find us on YouTube as well for our just live streams, shows, things like that. We're also this weekend I'm up in North Carolina. I'll be covering the Elon Delaware game. Yes. Excited for that one. Hopefully Nolan Henderson goes out. I'll be upset if I drove all this way and Delaware can't even play the starting quarterback because he's been electric this year, and I really want to see him in person. Next week, I'll be traveling up to Nashville for Tennessee State SEMO in a big OVC match, especially if Tennessee State wins this weekend over Murray State, which they should. But man, it's been a big year of traveling, covering FCS football, man. You can find me on Twitter at Zach McKonnell, and then at _Bluebloods is the Bluebloods Twitter, man. But I appreciate you guys having me.
Won't be the last time. Right before the playoffs, I definitely want to have you back. I might also have Brian McLaughlin on. I don't know if you know Brian.
Yep.
Okay, I figured you would. You two are I shouldn't have favorites, but I do. You two are like my favorites. And yeah, Cut Day's right in there too. He's quieter though, but I'm going to pull it out of him. I'm a good interviewer. Well, I cannot thank you enough. And if you care at all, even a little bit about FCS and HBCU football, please, what are you doing with your life if you're not following _the Bluebloods? And of course, Zach personally, because Zach's cool people too. So please get your lives right. If you are a person who grew up loving, playing, or even thinking about HBCU and FCS football, follow the Blue Bloods immediately, if not sooner. Once again, I thank you so much for your talent, sir, your time, your attention. I now give to you the rest of your life until the next time I summon thee.
Hey, have a good one, guys.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
We have a pretty much unbroken string of having amazing guests, Brock.
Yeah,
So
an education, to say the least. For everyone who's looking to build your draft board, even your dynasty draft boards, you guys can.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build a cooler we.
Sorry about that. Little too quick on the trigger there. But yes, indeed. He's an amazing wealth of resources and a heck of a photographer too. He and Cut Day, they took some amazing pictures down at the HBCU Legacy Bowl. And then, unfortunately, just as the band started getting loud, one of them or both of them kind of recorded while I was talking to Bucky Brooks, who was down there. But unfortunately, the band was so loud you couldn't hear my questions or his answers. So totally unusable footage, but not their fault. Not their fault at all. But yeah, promise I'll have them back right before the FCS playoffs begin. And we'll have another show, Brock, where I sort of introduce why the reason that HBCU schools don't tend to be in the Division II, or the best ones in Division II or FCS playoffs, is usually money, quite frankly. Because if you are the road team, it's a money loser. So because you've got travel, you got all this stuff, and you don't get any of the money, right? The money, the concessions, everything else, that's the home team. The team's hosting the game gets all that. So if you're a team that's operating on kind of a shoestring budget, it's a tough sell. So you end up instead being in some of the classics or all-star games or, Bayou Classic, the Celebration Bowls. Those are money winners. Those you get six figures, sometimes more from those, because you're getting that money. You're splitting it between the two teams, but that money's coming to you. You're not having to, so when you go to the FCS playoffs, if you're not the host team, if you're the host team, if it's at your stadium, it's not a bad deal. If you're the road team, it's a bad deal. Financially, at least, it's a bad deal because you've got travel, hotels, all this stuff. And if you're Alabama doesn't worry about this stuff, right? Even UNLV probably doesn't worry about that stuff. But sometimes if you're, say, Virginia Union and you make the D2 playoffs, sometimes you're looking at it like, well, can I make it work financially? So that's the sad truth, young Brock. Money. We live in a very, very capitalist society. And
football is different, unfortunately.
College football is very much a capitalist, until recently, the players were the only ones who were not capitalists. The players were not. Everybody else was a capitalist. Now the players finally get a chance to dip their beaks in the font as well. Now this time, for real, we'll have an actual commercial where I will not be cutting you off.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build a cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gold Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. # built for the wild. Pickup is a fan engagement platform that aims to build communities and turn the biggest headlines in sports into free-to-play props, while rewarding fans for their hot sports takes. You've likely seen their props on Nuts and Bolts Sports and some of your other favorite online publishers and leagues like USA Today, NASCAR, Flow Sports, and others. Simply make your pick on the pickup prop and verify your pick by entering your phone number, which you will use to track your picks. Accumulate points and exchange for prizes in their marketplace. Their merch ranges from Fanatics gift cards, cross nets just in time for summer, dugout mugs, and more. Make your picks ahead of the draft now.
The Team Nuts and Bolts Sports Store is officially open. Log on to www.teamnbsmerch.com and get your t-shirts, hoodies, polos, all sizes available. Once again, log on to teamnbsmerch.com. Get yours today.
So, back by popular, well, maybe not popular, maybe unpopular demand. But either way, I want to dig a little bit into the depths of one of the matchups. Now, Manny Diaz, who, of course, has been a successful defensive coordinator, then a somewhat less successful head coach, then now back to being a somewhat successful defensive coordinator, and there's lots of different ways to be a defensive coordinator. Everybody nowadays has moved away to some extent from being completely locked to being an odd or even front guy. He's mostly an even front guy, four men down line in front, mostly. Like everyone else, he jumps into certain things in other situations. But for the most part, when I dug into what he does schematically, he mostly keeps it simple.
Yes.
It's 4-3-4, 4-2-5, pretty much all the time, with the occasional odd front in special situations. And he mostly wants his guys to, quote unquote,
Hello.
playing fast. There we go. Playing fast usually means keeping it simple. Playing fast usually means giving you lesser things to think about, less reading and reacting. So he usually asks his down linemen, everyone but sort of his zero or like nose shade guy. Everyone else just kind of fires off the ball and ends up field. Sometimes even that guy. So not too much reading and reacting. Mostly it's get upfield and cause havoc. And then in the secondary, he'll play about 2 different kinds of zone and then a lot of man. And sometimes some trap coverages. And I'm going to just throw some graphics up there. So generally what you get out of him, something that looks kind of like that for the most part.
Yep.
And he likes to blitz, but he likes to blitz with a certain amount of safety, right? And by that, I mean a lot of fire zone stuff. So instead of just all your classic man blitzes, he'll jump into the 2 versions of zone they play with cover 2 and cover 3, occasionally quarters, but very rarely quarters match, but usually cover 2 or cover 3. And so what you're seeing here is that you're going to bring pressure. The free safety is going to take the deep middle. The field corner and the boundary corner take the deep outside thirds. And then you can bring 1 or 2 of these people, and occasionally both of these people. So your safety sometimes is going to come. Your strong safety sometimes is going to come. You might also bring a linebacker, and occasionally, if you're really feeling courageous, you might bring them both. Your will linebacker is going to rotate to vacate the area where your free safety, that underneath the hole, as we sometimes call it, has vacated, where a lot of teams will attack you when you're blitzing, right? Because you blitz where somebody vacated. So you always throw the ball where somebody vacated. And tight ends feast in that area. And you've got your Mike scraping over. You're hoping that coming through here, occupying this gap, you're hoping that 2 linemen will go with him. That way your Mike has a free run, a free hit on your quarterback. And then your Sam is a force player. Once again, making sure no one gets, if indeed it's not a pass and it's a run to his side, or if the quarterback rolls out, either to run or to pass, he's supposed to contain. And then everyone else here is either occupying a gap simply to open a hole for someone else who could be running through, or if somebody does a bad job of blocking you, go ahead in there and whack the quarterback yourself. Sometimes they'll pick up the blitz, but to do so, they'll let someone else go. I see that a lot of times where, somebody's so concerned about picking up the blitz, they let a D-tackle or somebody just run free. So that's one of the things he likes to do. And then here, from his days at Miami. So once again, you're seeing, this is going to be somebody who's going to run an over route, right? And he's going to carry him probably, until we get to here where he passes him off. Then we've got essentially your Mike is going to watch the back. If the back goes out, he covers him. If the back stays in, it's a green dog. He comes in there and either, hopefully whacks the quarterback, ideally, because the back-on-backer matchup should be a mismatch. If your back is successfully blocking that backer, you yell at the linebacker, basically. I mean, when you draw this up, your assumption is that back is not going to be able to handle him. And then you've got your overhang defender who's going to pick up anybody who drifts over here. Say a tight end comes in motion, then he picks him up, or if this slot receiver takes off, he has him, and then until he passes him off to the safety. And then sometimes you'll be in a combination coverage where it's, say, zone on one side and man on the other, or something. But he doesn't do that a lot. Like, he's a guy that plays it usually pretty straight. Every once in a while, he'll try to run a trap coverage to try to get a cheap interception. So I will drop that back. And Ohio State, of course, has a pretty fun offense. It's a combination of things. There's a little bit of the Chip Kelly stuff in there. A little bit of the old Urban Meyer stuff is still in there. Well, just talk about what are the things when you look at Ohio State, what they do on offense. What are some things that you notice, Brock?
They run a lot of 11 personnel. That means one running back, one tight end, and then two wide receivers. And they do a whole bunch of things from that formation. They're able to run the ball effectively at the middle. They're able to run some traps out to the side, and they're able to pass the ball very well, whether that be in screens. They love their screens. So they can throw the ball outside screens, get the ball at their playmakers out wide, and also some nice short to medium routes. So when you look at Ohio State's offense, what they love to do is obviously when they run personnel, they love to go 5 wide when they're have long yardage to go. And then also they just love pounding the football on the ground, which is a very great shot. The quarterback isn't C.J. Stroud. Now, I love C.J. Stroud, but it's pretty evident when homeboy throws the ball within the first quarter, it's not going to be on target. It takes him quite a while to settle down as a quarterback. And when you looked at the Iowa film, there was so many times that have been picked off. He obviously had that turnover, that was a fumble for us, a fumble for a touchdown. In the red zone, he threw it right. It takes a while for him to really settle down and get set in. So how do we prepare a game plan in order to combat that? It's very simple. We want very short routes, and we want to run the football. They got two really good running backs in Travion Henderson and Mike Williams. And we talked about it last week with Josh Keatley. Williams is a guy that can find yardage and kind of find daylight and find those key, 3 yards to get a first down. Not a guy that's going to burn all the time. That's Travion Henderson. The downfall of Travion Henderson is that he has difficulty finding daylight. Once he finds it, he's gone. Well, he finds it. So how do we manufacture things to make them very effective? So that's when we call out our play sheet if we can find it. Now, the play sheet is fine. So like you said, Penn State plays around a lot of 4-man front. And even the linebackers are very aggressive, overtly aggressive. They like to blow up the interior linemen. Sometimes they stack the line and they just send all of them at times. So we have to design something that are going to counteract that. And you look at, to me, you got to look at the North Carolina film for 2019. They were able to run all over them with Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. That is the blueprint of how to do two different Manny Diaz defense. Now, before I get started with this, I just want to talk about something real quick, and that is your Ohio State, right? This is a daytime trap game. This is a game Sean Clifford's probably going to go off in consistently. He's not going to throw it in these hands on the first time. It's Minnesota, right? So you got to be very consistent. So let's start out with 7 personnel. It'll be very easy. Just bring out the play sheet, right? We're gonna pull up the D tackles. We're gonna create a seam to the gap, and we're gonna swing our tight end out to blow up the end. Now I want y'all to remember this play because we're gonna see this again in a different style. So we're gonna talk about disguising plays. So this is how we're gonna run. We're gonna run no huddle because I don't want Manny shooting or making changes. So we're gonna once again go back to that 11 now for our number 2 play. Well, there we go. So we're gonna the same way as that we're all having alignment slant to the left and then basically the strong side of the formation. And we're gonna try and basically play a numbers game. We're gonna try and pick up the first. These plays should average around 5 yards per carry. We're gonna go to the right same formation. Motion the wide receiver to be on the quarterback, running back system, and then back. We're gonna go the outside. That playmaker the ball in open space. Try to get that off the end. We're going to tackle our guard from our center tackle to give down for the handoff to happen, and a running back is going to be the lead blocker. So they're going. We're going back to that 11-man personnel. Remember that play number 1? Where is it? It's on the other side. This is play number 1, how we did the run. This is the same thing as an RPO. Now we're gonna motion the running back to the left and then back to the right just to see the defense. I'm assuming that he is aggressive and stack line and send. So we're gonna slam all the offensive line. Right, we're gonna send the pass to blow up. And he's actually flat. And the quarterback series of reads either flat with a 10, wide receiver comes with all the line, or he can with it and run and comes down hard. Whatever he wants to do, so that is the play that's going to be the game and make the what happen. The best way to attack the linebackers to read the running back is to go either delayed routes, text routes, or to run the pass. That's a great way to attack. Going to play. If I can open up my piece of paper with my one hand, we are going up again, and we're going to slow down the tempo. The slow tempo is a really big thing for this house. Get off TJ Stroud to get overstimulated, or he's going to throw it right to the feet. So now we're going to come out in a, and then bam, we're going to go it out. This right here is 2 personnel, 2 running backs, and we don't want that. So we're gonna have the running back up with the wide receiver on the page. We're gonna have the and do a screen pass. Moving on to play number 7. So that we're gonna put a quick pistol formation to get out the reads. The wide running is the shallow flat is wide receiver going up is the tight end coming third read. You give the quarterback some options to get in rhythm and passes. I mentioned earlier what talks about a guy in the crowd. Anyway, I think we skipped. Let me go back to 6. So basically, again, we're gonna 22 personnel, and we're basically gonna a lot to read. But essentially, how the play works is the running back for this side is motioning. We're gonna ball, and the quarterback's gonna pitch it. It's gonna be an option play with Myers, maybe on Henderson. Williams is gonna be the guy that gets the ball, and then he's gonna pitch to Henderson, who, of course, as we know, when he finds daylight, that's how he gets the ball as well as the old cop that I saw with Tavon Austin and Tony Pollard. I think back in 2018, and then the last play, number 8, is going to be very simple. We're going 5 wide. Our 2 wide receivers on the left are going to slant in. We have our slot wide receiver going across, and then our tight end doing an out, and our wide receiver. The first read is that tight end. He can check it to the wide receiver going across, and then he can check down to the slot. After that, but of course, you can always throw it away. So those are some of the concepts on Ohio State. I want them to get on the huddle, keep the defense on their toes, and attack them early with the run. I'll try to settle in so you can hit those passes. To me, that's how you do it. And to me, Ohio State can do that effectively. Penn State has no shot in this football game.
The one other thing I would say you're going to see occasionally, not often, but occasionally, is that bare front. Not a lot. And the other thing you're going to see some is that prowler package, where you've got literally 7 defensive backs on the field. They have a lot of really good defensive backs. He wants to get all of them on the field. Mm-hmm. One of the defensive backs, I think, has 2 or 2.5 sacks already. I think it's Jair Brown, has a couple of sacks already. They bring a lot of pressure from the secondary. So timing that is everything, because if you time it wrong, you're going to give up probably a touchdown. So it's a risk-reward proposition.
Yes,
but
exactly. So exactly. So the counter for that is to send either you gotta go 6-man protection, or you gotta send the running back on a little flat route or something. In every design play that's a passing play, CJ Stroud must have an out if they bring heat, no matter what, because we all know Matt Diaz is a gambler and he will bring it. So if you don't, I always think about the New Orleans Saints Philadelphia Eagles game where Reggie Bush got lit up on the little out route because it was bringing heat. Like you got to make sure that you got multiple outs for CJ Stroud if they're bringing heat, because they will. And in my opinion, when CJ Stroud gets put on pressure, he's not calm in the pocket, and he will put that ball in dangerous situations. So watch out for that as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm going to throw up one last graphic about something I think we'd expect in this game. And then we will have another important message that you should definitely check out. But you see also a lot of simulated pressures. A lot of times you can make problems by making someone think something's happening when something isn't happening, and force the ball to come out and then have your guys squat. And you've got a lot of receivers. Well, they are receivers in a way. Defensive backs who play like receivers in that they are very aggressive, as you said. Porter has really good ball skills. Brown is all of them. They have a whole group of defensive backs who think the ball is theirs, which is what you want. You want those guys to treat the ball like it's theirs. So this is one of the simulated pressures you're going to see, and especially in that prowler package. So some of these guys who normally would be linebackers in a regular situation will actually be replaced by extra safeties or corners. And what you're going to be doing is seeing these guys are going to simulate a pressure. You're going to see at least one of these guys, the money guy or whatever you'll call him, right? Your third safety. It's going to walk up, probably sugar one of these gaps, right? Sugar means to, stick his face in there, get someone's attention, make a center point him out, make a quarterback point him out, try to adjust for what he's about to do, maybe even get in this gap, then, oh, no, I'm not in the A gap. Whoop, up, now in the B gap, right? Make those guys adjust. Then you've got your nickel creeped up, looking like he might come on a nickel cat blitz, right? He's looking like, I might be coming. And then right at the snap of the ball, they drop out. Now, it's once again a dangerous game, because if somebody takes off on a deep route where you're trying to get back to where you're supposed to be, bad things could happen. But it discombobulates. It messes with the communication of the offensive line. And it can make guys slow to react to something that's actually happening instead of what is really happening. And then obviously it's going to soften some of your coverage, because you can't take as many chances on the back end when you're trying to simulate pressure, because guys are going to be out of position, trying to get back to position. And once again, the famous example we keep going back to, and it because I must be a masochist, but is the Troy Polamalu simulated pressure situation where they're trying to get the Broncos to react. And then while he's doing all that, Ryan Clark is getting burned on the back end by Demaryius Thomas, by, of all people, Timothy Dwight Tebow. But I will drop that graphic out. Communication.
Right. I think that's the exact formation for which Tebow smoked on. I think Demaryius Thomas is the S in that situation. But, for Penn State, the nickel loves to bite on the run a lot.
True.
A lot. How do we counter that? Bubble screen. RPO bubble screen. So that's one of the ways. If we look at some of the formations that Bad Ideas puts out, it's very clear that the hit and the out are going to be wide open, because those corners love to bail. Now, I'm not saying they don't have the speed to recover, but I'm saying if you have the route running abilities of Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jackson Jippa, you're going to be able to get some space. The only question is to make those throws in time. I don't know that. But to me, what you really want to do is those are aggressive corners. You want to make them bite with those short routes, and then you got to hit them with a double move just randomly. And I'm just not sure. Honestly, if I can speak frankly, I'm not sure CJ is going to have a good game. I hope he does. I'm a big fan of his, and I'm a big fan of the Ohio State offense. But when you look at some of the pressures that Manny Diaz can design and some of his throws early, if he gets behind the chains, he's going to start forcing a lot of balls into some coverages and not going to like it. And that's what I really fear. So I hope that Ohio State, for their sake, pounds the run, because I really don't believe Ohio State's front seven can keep up with Ohio State's offensive line.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens with that. And, of course, this might be that game where Sean Clifford all of a sudden, out of nowhere, becomes Joe Montana.
It feels a lot like it. An early game at Penn State. Penn State 6-1. They had a really bad showing against Michigan. Then they smoked Minnesota.
It feels like one of those random, amazing Sean Clifford games, doesn't it?
Yeah, how can we not talk about Penn State's running back? Stud running back, too. Expect him to have a big game as well. It just everything seems to be a trap game for Ohio State, And CJ Stroud cannot put the ball in the. If they punt, that's okay. It's okay to punt.
Punting is good. Punting is winning.
Yeah, Sean Pepper's biggest enemy is a long field.
Yes. I just feel like Noah Singleton in like a special teams game or something, like maybe punt return or kickoff return. But before our final segment, let's look at an important message.
Enjoy 40% off site-wide. Vitable takes the guesswork out of feeling good. Get your own personalized daily vitamin pack safely delivered to your doorstep every month. Take their online quiz to find out which vitamins and minerals can support your personal needs based on your own diet and lifestyle. Hashtag only what you need, nothing that you don't. All vitamins are manufactured in Australia at the highest quality standard. Ingredients come in the best form for their absorption by your body. Enjoy 40% off site-wide using code NBS40 at checkout.
This commercial is brought to you by TrueBrain. Say hello to TrueBrain. We're not magicians. We're not going to turn you into a rocket scientist, unless you're already a rocket scientist. We're not big pharma, and our products are custom made to boost mental output. We empower people to do their best thinking.
So in our final segment, we're going to talk about some games that maybe not everybody on the planet's already talking about. I think that I always sort of adopt a conference sometimes. This year, that non-Power 5 conference for me has been the Sun Belt, aka hashtag Fun Belt. I think there's a tremendous amount of really good football being played in the Sun Belt. I think there's a lot of really good football players in the Sun Belt Conference. And I'm excited about this slate of Sun Belt games. The Marshall-Coastal Carolina game should be very, very interesting. I've mentioned Charles Huff's name before. I think Marshall would be wise to try to extend him, but he's a terrific, terrific coach. He understands recruiting. He's really good at developing running backs. He was a great running backs coach himself at Penn State. Obviously, a game that's going to get some attention in the Sun Belt. That's one I feel good about, and I'll be watching. Another Sun Belt game that I think will be interesting to check out is Southern Miss. Well, actually, Southern Miss Louisiana just happened, and Southern Miss squeaked out. I'll be honest, I thought Louisiana was going to win that game, but that Southern Miss is a dangerous team in their conference anyway. And then Robert Morris and App State should not be terribly interesting. Arkansas State and South Alabama might be closer than expected. And I'm going to throw out one other one that I think might be an interesting, surprising Sun Belt game. And admittedly, it's not going to be one that people are going to circle, right? Georgia State 2-5, 3-4 Old Dominion, but Old Dominion has a receiver that I think is quietly one of the best receivers in the whole darn country. And if Allie Bridges is one of those guys who's got, once again, makes super difficult catches outside the frame of his body. He's got long arms and big hands. And I think he could be potentially more than just a possession guy. I really want to see what he runs. When you are coming from, obviously FCS, Division II, whatever, but even from Group of 5, when you're anything below the top level of football, your physical testing is going to be super important. And like I said, I like Blake Watson. Their running back is tremendous. I think Old Dominion is one of those programs that is on the rise. I think this year is sort of one of those years that on their way to getting where they're going. But I really do like some of the skill position talent they have, quite frankly. And before it's all said and done, I think that they'll probably get back to 500. I think they'll get to maybe even over 500. And this could be one of those stepping stones to that. But Allie Jennings III, I think he's a West Virginia transfer, and West Virginia obviously knows a little bit about wide receivers, but he's one of those guys that, he's got the frame, think about what a guy like Robert Woods is doing. And I think he might be a little, he's bigger, and I think we'll see what his testing's like. Like I said, that's the big thing to me is, can he show up and run
a good time. If he runs in the mid 4.4s at 6'1.5", 197 pounds, yeah, there'll be a place for him. Somebody will find a home for him at the next level. And I'm going to ask Brock about maybe if he has an under the radar or a sort of a sleeper game that he's excited about and he thinks more people should know about.
Ooh, great question. You know, I don't think I know this could be a primetime game, so it completely ignores the question. But I don't think enough people are paying attention to this Michigan State-Michigan game coming up. Michigan State has had a really bad season. A lot of people are starting to question Mel Tucker's contract. I think Mel Tucker shuts everybody up. I think he proves why he got paid. I think he upsets Michigan, I believe, in the big house this year. So Mel Tucker, I believe, is 2-0 against Michigan so far. I think it goes to 3-0. I think Michigan's rated, and this is the game when they come down to earth. There's going to be a standout player in this game. I think his name is Brandon Wimden.
Oh, correct? You're talking about the defensive end / outside linebacker. Yeah.
From UNLV, right? Dude is an absolute stud. He has day 2, day 3 pick written all over him. I think he's going to shine really well against the game. I think he's going to be able to contain J.J. McCarthy, and they're going to make them a very one-dimensional team more than they already are. So expect him to have a big one.
I'm with you on Jeremy Wyndham. I think Jeremy Wyndham is going to end up in the top 50 to 65 picks for us. And then obviously bad testing would change that. But unless he has a bad combine / pro day, I don't see him making it past the last pick of the second round or the first couple of picks of the third.
Yes, I completely agree with that as well. I just want to shout out a couple of teams real quick before we go off. Some under the radar teams that have had some really good seasons so far. South Carolina, USC, right? They're 5-2 right now. They just beat Texas A&M last week. Shane Beamer has done a phenomenal job turning around that program. I love to see where the Gamecocks go from here. And quite frankly, if they play Clemson and Clemson doesn't ball out, which they haven't been of late, I have the Tigers on upset alert when they play for the Palmetto Trophy, right?
Yes, correct.
That's correct. Thank you. Last team I want to shout out real quick. I have to go with Boise State. Boise State was a program for which we all thought they're done and dusted. Avalos is out. It's a wrap. And then, bam, they just start reeling off wins, beat Air Force a couple weeks ago. That was a big test for me. They could potentially win the Mountain West this year. Mountain West is very, very, very weak. But that's beside the point. Boise State, well done to them for turning it around as well. But there's one more team I know they're slipping my mind that I really want to shout out. Who are they? Oh, it's going. You know what? I remember who it is. It's the LSU Tigers. My goodness, for as much of a Brian Kelly hater that I am, the Tigers have been very impressive of late. They're 5-2 right now. Only losses are should be the number 1 team in the country, and also a Florida State team for which they should have beat. Probably the first game of the season, and they had their extra point blocked and multiple kicks blocked in that game as well. LSU Tigers are looking really good. I think it is just a flash in the pan, though. They will come back down to earth. Brian Kelly is still their head coach. But for right now, gotta give them their flowers. Well done to the Tigers.
Well, once again, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank once again Zach McKonnell of the Bluebloods. If you're not on at the Bluebloods, get there. If you care even a little bit about FCS and HBCU football, get over there. They do great work. The podcast is fantastic, incredibly well done. Some of the images those guys shoot, man, they got some shooters. I mean, those guys know what they're doing, and the content is just solid all throughout. We will do this again in a week, but before you go, hey, here's some stuff you should see.
All 22 is the future of scouting databases. With over 20,000 players, All 22 allows you to be the GM. All 22, the Global Scouting Network.
Peace.